Sound is good, I'm thinking right now. All right. Okay. Just trying to see if this is working. Okay.
Stop firing rockets and it will end. After the 7th of October, we have the right to do whatever we want, and nobody will tell you same now with Hezbollah. Children are innocent. Okay. Always, always, okay, always. So if you can live in peace, if you can live in peace with...
Officially, Israel denies any involvement in the Pager attack, which killed 32 people, including 2 children. Just about nobody believes that. Those defending Israel say this was an audacious precision strike against Hezbollah terrorists. Critics call it psychological warfare.
Anybody believe this shit?
Itself. Whichever side you're on, this now looks like an all-out war on a second front for Israel in Lebanon. That at least 274 people have been killed by Israeli strikes on Lebanon, a response to the barrage of rockets aimed at Israel this weekend.
Yeah.
Hezbollah says that the battle without limits has begun. In a few minutes, we'll debate all this with our panel. The first from New York, Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, joining me now. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining me. Let me ask you first of all about something John Kirby, the US National Security Council spokesperson, said. He said, "We're saying this directly to our Israeli counterparts. We don't believe that escalating this military conflict is in their best interest." He's talking, of course, about potential all-out war with Lebanon. What is your reaction to what Mr. Kirby said?
First, thank you for having me, Pierce. I agree. We don't want to see escalation, but I don't think we see any other solution. For 11 months, we have been so patient, waiting for diplomacy to bring results. And what we saw with all the rockets and missiles, more than 240 Israelis were
What
killed.
is this accent that this guy has?
Viewers, it all started on October 8th when we were under attack from the south, from Hamas.
It sounds like he's got like a burnt tongue
and
or
that's why
something.
they're sending those rockets and missiles. So I think the time is now to push back Hezbollah from the fence, and it will be done either with diplomacy, which is not working, unfortunately, or with sending a clear message to Hezbollah, stop it. We don't want to see full war. We don't want to see escalation, but we are determined to allow the Israelis who fled their homes to come back to their communities.
I mean, in the last few days, we've seen over 30 people killed.
Everything they've said has either been a lie,
pages and walkie-talkies and other devices.
Most of it's just been.
There is a raging debate, as you know, about the legality of
things
that
they're doing
because of the proximity to many of the exploding devices of civilians. Booby traps, if they target areas or people which have civilians around them, even if the initial target is deemed to be a military combatant, a booby trap in that scenario would be deemed illegal. Are you confident that what Israel did in exploding all those devices, which wasn't extraordinary from an operational point of view, extraordinary success, but it did include the deaths of a number of civilians, including children, are you confident that what you did there was legal?
So we are not commenting about this specific attack, but I will tell you that when you look at what we are doing, we are targeting terrorists, period. We use advanced technology to attack those who are involved with terror. Sometimes when they hide behind civilians or they function in civilian areas, you have casualties, but we try to minimize them, and according to international law. But that's a hypocrisy, because what you have just brought up, I heard it at the UN also in the last few days, but where were all those experts when we had hundreds of rockets and missiles that were targeting Israelis? I want to remind you that there was children playing soccer. So, we're doing the opposite. We don't intend to attack civilians. And if it happens, we regret that. But our intention is to kill the terrorists. And
I'm very sorry. I'm going to pause this. This whole thing with the kids playing soccer, this is how messed up and fucked up this whole thing is. We have evidence coming in from later that it was actually a misfire from a Iron Dome, plastic dome or whatever, defensive missile trying to misfiring, and this happens all the time. We have multiple videos of this all the time. Just recently they just killed their own crew on a ship because of this whole thing that I just said, which is the plastic dome misfiring. And I don't know if it confuses or what, but it hit their own ship and killed people. I don't know, but so this is what happened in this Druze town, which actually belongs to Syria legally in the UN, that they're occupying along with everything else in that land. And so even but then they blamed it on Hezbollah and then used this bullshit blame to go ahead and use that as press or you know, reasons to just do whatever they're doing and you know, start doing whatever they're doing in Lebanon right now. I mean, this is just, you can't get any more depraved than this. Actually, hold on, yeah, I'll bring you in later, man. Anyway, this, I mean, look, when this whole thing happened in Sharm el-Sheikh, I think is the name of the town or village, they did not want these guys in there. They like yelled at Smotrich and fucking, I don't even know if Ben Gvir went in there or whoever the hell of these fuckers tried to walk in there. They didn't let him in because they knew what was going on. They did not want him. They believe that they're Syrian. They believe they're under occupation. And then they know that the thing that killed them. And let me just tell you one little actual like reason why we know it was true is because the thing that they claim that was hit by Hezbollah was actually, you know, you know what kind of damage that would do. And that's not the kind of damage that it did. But it did do the kind of damage, which is basically something that would explode above ground into lots of shrapnel. This is for, like I said, Iron Dome, Plastic Dome, air defense, which is, it gets close to other, you know, incoming missiles or rockets, and then it explodes and tries to get it with the shrapnel and everything. And so that's exactly what had killed all these children, and not Hezbollah rocket, which, you know, according to what they claimed was a Barkhan, which would not look like. Anyway, it doesn't even matter. I'm just, you guys watch. Go ahead.
We are
This is
proven
just,
that we are capable of
that this guy's fucking
using the
sorry.
technology to kill the bad guys. Exactly like the attack we killed Akil, you know, a notorious terrorist who was in charge of the killing of more than 200 American city soldiers. So yes, it was in a place where you had maybe civilians in the area, but it was a precise missile that got exactly to the place where those terrorists were plotting another attack against Israel.
I mean, Volker Turk, who's the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, told an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council Friday, and I'm quoting him directly, weaponizing ordinary communication devices represents a new development in warfare. Targeting thousands of Lebanese people using pagers, two-way radios, and electronic equipment without their knowledge is a violation of international human rights law. So you have there the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights directly saying that what happened is a war crime.
Well, I sat next to him last Friday, and I was shocked because for him, when Jews are being killed, that's okay. It's legitimate for Hezbollah for 11 months to attack us, to send rockets
Oh
to
my God.
population. But when we actually take measures against terrorists, all of a sudden he speaks
This
about
is
human
why
rights. You know, Pierce, the days when
Oh
Jews
my
were
God.
massacred without consequences are over now. We are fed up. Enough. Now we are protecting ourselves.
See, this is what they're doing.
happened to us on
They're
October 7th,
making it.
and the
So now
brutality
I
of the
gotta
attacks
come
of
and laugh
Hezbollah,
at this.
we will not sit
you
idly
see what
by
I'm saying?
and wait
Like,
for
I'm not
human rights
trying to
experts
be
of
an
the UN
asshole,
to tell us
but
what
when
we can do
you
or what we cannot do. We are defending ourselves, period. The attack on
You're
October
defending
7th was
yourself. This is
unprovoked.
how you
The
defend.
attacks of Hezbollah against us, there was no provocation from our side. And I think the pressure should be on the Lebanese government to take action now against Hezbollah and to
don't
reach
worry.
some kind of agreement
Don't
that will
worry.
push them back from our border.
I mean, it's been reported that 274
You're more
people,
likely
I
to
think, so
push the
far,
border
and
back than
that
move
total's
them
been
back
rising
from the
fast
border.
in the last few hours, have been killed today alone from Israeli airstrikes into Lebanon.
They don't give a shit.
That's a lot of people. Are you confident again that these are all Hezbollah terrorists, or could there be a large number of civilians who've been killed in this series of airstrikes?
We are targeting terrorists. We have good intelligence. But let me be
Good
clear.
in-
If somebody today in Lebanon is watching our show now, and he knows that he had a rocket launcher in his basement, he should take his belongings
This is such
and move to the north. He
bullshit.
shouldn't stay next to the
Every
rocket launcher
kibbutz is a
because we will
military.
attack those launchers.
Oh my
So
God.
in many places that we know that Hezbollah is placing their ammunition
I'm gonna stop talking
next to
just so you
civilians,
guys
or
can
even
listen,
inside
but-
the homes of civilians, we encourage those civilians not to stay there. We are not targeting civilians. We are targeting military target of Hezbollah. But
Somebody
as we all
get
know,
something
they are hiding them
like
next
some
to UN
ice in this
facilities,
guy's mouth.
next to schools, next to hospitals. They know that it will be harder for us, but we are committed to neutralize
How
the
does
spread of
his
Hezbollah,
wife
and we will
listen
do
to
it
this all day, or
according
anybody
to
around
international
this
law.
guy? This is
But
just the
we have
most
to realize
annoying
that the
fucking
civilians, if
voice.
they have the chance, they should move away from this region.
The weekend saw Israeli forces raiding the offices of the news broadcaster Al Jazeera in Ramallah and ordering it to close for an initial period of 45 days. This follows the fact that for the last year, it's been almost impossible for foreign journalists to get into Gaza. The IDF have stopped them doing that.
Hey, just scrolling?
What?
Nope. Shop
All
at
right,
farmandfleet.com.
sorry,
Farm and
guys.
Fleet. Is that a farm store?
It's a lot more than that. They've got name brand everything. Clothes.
Why is Israel so keen to stop media reporting on what is happening?
So we are not stopping the media from reporting. You know, I want to remind you that
Man,
Gaza
fuck this
had
guy.
a very long border with Egypt for all over the years, and I never heard anyone from the media complaining in Cairo why we cannot go enter Gaza from Egypt. They always
The
come to
fuck
us.
does that
Maybe it's
mean
easier
about
for
his
them to
question?
come to Tel Aviv rather than go to Cairo. But now Gaza is a war zone. We are fighting in Gaza, and we allow media to come in when they coordinate it with the military, when we know that we can protect them. We don't want them to be traveling all over. Then, God forbid, somebody will be hurt. And you can imagine the headlines if somebody from the media.
Oh no! You wouldn't want anybody to get
Yeah,
hurt.
the point is, Ambassador, that these journalists, they're foreign correspondents. I know many
Oh
of
my
them
God.
myself. They're extremely experienced. They've covered many war zones.
Even this
They're
guy's
perfectly prepared
sick
to
of
take
it.
that risk to their own lives to report what's happening there. But it's the fact that Israel has gone to such strenuous lengths to stop international journalists covering the war on the ground in Gaza has led many people to believe that the reason you don't want them there is that you don't want them to see what's really going on. So my response to you would be, well, if you're comfortable about letting journalists go in, let them in, let them do their jobs, and let people on the outside see what's really happening
these guys are
and
gonna
make their own
get
minds
what's
up.
coming to them.
Pierce, let's be realistic and honest about it. Everybody knows exactly what's happening in Gaza. All the major networks, they have locals that are reporting every day from Gaza, and they send the material to all the networks. Yes, you know, I'm sure there are some reporters who want to go by themselves, but today we are not in a position of allowing reporters and officials, you know, even President Abbas said he wants to go to Gaza. We are not starting to coordinate visits of groups into Gaza today. We are fighting terrorists. We are moving ahead. We are close of achieving the goals of the war.
Why have you shut down Al Jazeera's studio in Ramallah?
Doesn't it? Oh my
West
God!
Bank? That's not in Gaza. Why have you shut that down?
So we gathered the intelligence about the incitement, and now there will be an evaluation period of 45 days to see what actually happened. There will be an inquiry. But once we gathered enough intelligence and our legal experts told us, yes, there is a base for incitement, we decided that during time of war, we should not allow that incitement to continue.
But with all respect, Ambassador, what gives Israel the right to do that? It's the West Bank. This is not in the middle of Israel. What gives you the right to decide whether Al Jazeera operates in Ramallah or not?
Chill.
Well, so according to international law, we have standing there, even those who are against us can agree that it's a disputed area. And when we are fighting terrorists, and today Iran trying to flood Judea and Samaria with explosives and weapons, so if you have somebody who's promoting terror and attacks against Jews, I don't think we should sit and wait to see what happens.
So dirty.
You know, we did it maybe before October 7th, but not anymore. Now, when we see a threat, we will take the right measures to protect ourselves.
But some would say that when you say that Al Jazeera is inciting, that actually what is really happening is they are reporting uncomfortable information for Israel that you would rather suppress. And again, it comes back to the apparent keenness of Israel to suppress press freedom and media freedom to operate freely without being controlled in this way. I'm not sure that you should have that right to shut down television networks.
I hear so many people who care about freedom of speech, but you know, I'm proud of the freedoms that you have in Israel. We are the strongest democracy in the Middle East for sure, and we can compete with many other democracies also all around the world. And according to all the indexes, you know, we're in a good place for freedom of speech and democracy, and it will continue to be that case. But sometimes you have a line,
maybe for a
and the
couple
line
more
is between
years.
reporting and inciting. And if you have reporters who actually incite against the Jewish community in Judea and Samaria, or against our troops who defending those communities, that's a line we should not allow to be crossed. And that's exactly what we are doing. There is freedom of speech. You have many outlets, but once we feel that there is incitement, we are now examining it, and maybe in 45 days it will be released or reopened or not.
There is a belief that Prime Minister Netanyahu is just continuing, not just with the war in Gaza, but also now planning a major new war in Lebanon, because it suits him politically, that he knows when this is over, all the polls suggest he'll be out of a job.
Oh,
He's also facing personal corruption charges.
He wouldn't do that.
What can you say to reassure people that
would never do that.
There's not another agenda going on here where Benjamin Netanyahu and some very right-wing members of his cabinet are just engaged in what seems to be endless warfare with no apparent end game? You know, you've leveled Gaza. No one seems to know what on earth happens after that when this is over. You're now threatening to level large swathes of Lebanon as well to get rid of Hezbollah. Where does this end? And how does it make Israel a more secure country by doing what you're doing?
Well, I think it's a baseless assumption. Even if you had a different prime minister today or a different government, you would have looked at the facts. And the facts are that in Gaza today, we have 101 hostages. We are committed to bring them back home. I'm meeting the families today during the high-level week. We're going to see dignitaries. I don't expect those European leaders to actually bring the hostages back. It will not happen. We will have to do it ourselves. So I think it's the moral responsibility of the Israeli government to finish the job, eliminate Hamas, and bring the hostages. And same with Lebanon. You have 60, 70,000 immigrants, not immigrants, they are refugees within their own country that left their communities. What you will tell them after a year? You cannot go back to Kiryat Shmona. You cannot go back to your communities because Hezbollah, they are not allowing you to come back. So I think it has nothing to do with the prime minister or the government. It's about our enemies who are trying to isolate us, destroy us, and we have to fight back. We wish that we will be able to celebrate the Jewish holidays peacefully. No one wants to send, and I can tell you from personal experience, his son to the military to fight those wars. But we understand we have no other choice. We are being under attack, and all those who are now blaming us for what's happening, that's pure hypocrisy.
Ambassador Daniel, I really appreciate you taking time out of what I know is a very, very busy schedule for you in New York to talk to Uncensored. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, God.
Well, joining me now are the Lebanese-American journalist, Rania Khalek, the Israeli columnist, Gideon Levy, the legal scholar.
While you guys watch this, I'll be right back.
Alan Dershowitz. Let me start with you, Alan Dershowitz.
Oh, my God, this fucking pedophile.
On the legality issue.
Why is this guy walking?
In the last few days with the deliberate explosion of thousands of pages,
you guys all know how dirty this Dershowitz is, right?
Eminent legal brains on this.
He's fucked.
Arguing quite vehemently that this
Epstein
has entered the realm of illegal booby trapping.
Oh my God!
Endangering the lives and taking the lives, as it turned out, of civilians. What is your view about the
legality
of this mass targeting?
Of course, he's going to be defending these
it's
fucking
not even a close question.
psychopaths.
There are two issues of international law distinguishing between civilians and combatants and proportionality.
So
a combatant is somebody
legal
who
law.
gets a communication device from a terrorist organization. So everyone who had that communication device is a combatant. And then the question is proportionality. You know that some civilians will be killed. The general ratio that's been acceptable around the world.
We all know that was
4 to 1.
terrorism.
That is 4 civilians killed for every combatant.
You didn't know who had him at that point.
That was the rule.
It could have been in the air.
That's what America did. That's what Israel did.
There was cars in the road.
It's been approximately 2 to 1. The best ratio.
Look at him.
Look at him. Country fighting.
This is how lawyers
justify
just random acts
when it comes
of
to the devices.
I'm sorry, guys. I want to repeat.
Better.
Bring
a
this
tiny
back because I've been
percentage of the people killed.
But no. This is just so. Oh my God. I mean, if you look at his reasoning, he's just legitimizing all kinds of terrorist activities. But this is how lawyers legitimize terrorism now. And I really, really hope this guy gets what's coming to him. I hope people like him get taken. I mean, what happened to The Hague? Jesus Christ.
Let's see. Issue
Poor
of what
Rania.
happened in the last few days with the deliberate explosion of thousands of pages, two-way radios, electronic equipment, and so on. I've seen eminent legal brains on this, arguing quite vehemently that this has entered the realm of illegal booby trapping, endangering the lives and taking the lives, as it turned out, of civilians. What is your view about the legality of this mass targeting of electronic devices?
It's not even a close question. There are two issues of international law distinguishing between civilians and combatants and proportionality. So a combatant is somebody who gets a communication device from a terrorist organization. So everyone who had that communication device is a combatant. And then the question is proportionality. You know that some civilians will be killed. The general
civilian
Hezbollah.
Nobody.
Oh my God. Is about 4 to 1. That is 4
This is a
civilians
political
killed
party,
for every
people.
combatant. That was the rule in
Don't
Iraq.
be
That was
retarded,
the rule in
whoever's
Afghanistan.
listening.
That's what America did. That's what Israel did. In Gaza, it's been approximately 2 to 1, the best ratio of any country fighting urban war where civilians
They
are
keep
used
saying it until
when
it's
it comes
true.
to the devices, the ratio is far, far better. A tiny percentage of the people killed were civilians. The vast, vast majority were combatants. So this is probably the best example in modern warfare history of proportionality and of fewer civilians being killed in comparison to the combatants. So Israel should be praised from a legal point of view, from a moral
We gotta
point of view,
thank 'em.
and from a tactical point of
We
view.
gotta thank
And the
'em
attacks
for
on
the
Israel
shit
are
they're
all a
doing.
reflection of
Don't
a
worry,
standard weaponization of the legal system that hurts the
Oh,
rule
you're
of
gonna get
law
thanked.
because it makes it clear
Israel's
that the rule of
definitely
law
gonna
is
get
just being
thanked.
used selectively against the nation state of the Jewish people. This is not even a close question. Anybody who says that Israel violated the rules of law with these explosive devices simply is being discriminatory and wrong. It's not a close question legally.
Okay, before I go
This
to
guy needs to
Rania,
go
just
in prison
a question
and
that
get
sprung to my mind as you were talking there.
fucking
If Israel has the
gang raped.
capability to do
You
this
guys know he's
in
a
the way that they
pedophile,
did
right?
it in
Like
Lebanon, why
seriously,
couldn't they have
I don't
gone
just
after
say that
Hamas
shit.
in the same way in Gaza?
Oh my god, this fucking
Well, because the
Dershowitz is
Gazans,
the worst.
the Hamas doesn't use the same kind
You
of
should see who
communication
he,
devices. I wish they could. If they had gotten Sinwar on a telephone, that would have been the end of the
protects
war.
as a lawyer.
The war would be over.
people
Remember
he
that as soon as Sinwar surrenders, as
represents.
soon as Gaza lays down its arms, as soon as Hamas lays down its arms, the war is over. As soon as Hezbollah stops
Whoa.
firing rockets, the war is over.
Soon
Israel
as they do
cannot
it,
do anything to stop the war.
Oh,
All it can
God.
do is lay down its arms and open itself up to a repeat of October 7th, which
Sorry,
Hamas has
everybody, I'm
pledged to
just
do, or a
irritable
repeat of
today.
October 8th, which Hezbollah
more
has
than
pledged
usual.
to do. Let's apply the same standard to Israel as the United States applied after 9/11,
The
as
fuck up
the
with the
allies
standards,
in
man. If
NATO
they had the
applied.
same
And as
standard,
long as you apply a
you'd be
single
hanging.
standard to Israel, you'll see that it's been doing the right thing. I wish that Israel could have done that in Gaza and the war would be over, but technologically it's not been possible. Israel has used every possible technology to try to get Sinwar, but Sinwar surrounds himself with hostages. As soon as Israel got close to rescuing an American citizen and 5 other hostages, Hamas put bullets in the back of their head and killed them.
That's
the
before
kind of
you-
enemy
or
that
is it
Israel
after
dealing
you
with, and I
guys
hope the
shot
world realizes
your own
that
hostages
if it's
with
allowed to continue in Israel,
gunships
if Hamas
and tanks
Hezbollah
and
and
shit?
Iran are allowed
We have
to continue
video
their
of that.
terrorism in Israel, it's coming to a theater near you. Iran will not stop at Israel. They want to continue what they've done to Iraq, to Lebanon, to Yemen, and bring it to Europe.
Yeah,
and bring
no,
it to the
but
United
thank
States.
God
Israel
if
is
they're not
fighting
going to
for
stop
all Western
for Israel,
democracies,
thank
not
you,
just for the defense of
Iran.
Okay, let me
Thank
bring
you
in Ron, who's been
for
waiting
trying to
patiently.
bring some fucking
what's your response to
sanity to
Alan
this
Dershowitz?
world. Jesus.
Well, you know, Alan Dershowitz has spent his entire career justifying Israel murdering Arab children. That's
Not
right,
just
now busy
that.
defending pedophiles and rapists like Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein. So I'm not
Okay,
surprised
so
that
we're
he's
going to
come
get
on
into
this program
personal
today to
attacks
defend
now.
terrorism. Let me finish,
Let's
Alan.
Let's
Let
stay
me
away
finish,
from the
Alan. Let me
personal
finish,
attacks
Alan.
and get to the merits.
Am
But
I
you're not
wrong?
going to attack me personally for being a defense lawyer. I defend Arabs. I defend Muslims. I have defended communists. I defend Nazis. I'm a
Are you
defense
done?
lawyer. And please
Oh my God.
stop
All right.
making personal
He's
attacks on me.
always
And get to the
defending
merits
those
if you have
pedophiles,
anything
though.
to say on the merits. So
There's
far,
a
you
good
said
pattern
nothing
in
on the
there.
merits. It's just been a personal attack, which
Well,
you
you don't
ought
let
to
me
be
talk,
ashamed
so.
of.
All right. I'm not ashamed of saying what I just said. It's objectively true. That said, you did just justify what Leon Panetta, the former CIA director, called an act of terrorism, Israel blowing up cellular devices. And we should all be concerned with that standard Israel set. Because by your logic, Alan, does that make it okay to blow up the cellular devices of Israeli soldiers who are off duty, far from any battlefield, going about their daily lives with their kids in grocery stores, in hospitals? That is what Israel did to Lebanon last week.
That would be
wow,
legal.
we know that would be called a
legal.
terrorist
That would be
attack if it
legal under
happened.
the law.
Oh,
then,
wow.
and then let me just say, I am very upset
I
right
hope
now.
they
I'm
use
very
that.
upset right now because Israel has just murdered 300 of my fellow countrymen in Lebanon in an indiscriminate carpet bombing campaign based on lies. I have people calling me, telling me the horrors they're experiencing at this very moment
Don't
under
worry.
Israeli
Just stop
bombardment.
firing
And
rockets.
it's
Just stop firing rockets and it will end. That's all. Just stop firing at Israeli communities. and
Everybody just
civilians,
hates
and
the
it will end.
Jews. They didn't do
Everyone
nothing here. It's all about
Ronnie,
anti-Semitism.
Hang on, let me ask you
Don't worry.
thousands of
Don't worry,
Americans
Ronnie.
protested.
Ronnie, let me ask you a question. You don't
Don't worry,
dispute,
Ronnie.
presumably, that Hezbollah has spent the last year
Here we go again with
firing
his
rockets into Israel.
false
do you? You don't
Of
equivalent.
course she
dispute
disputes it. Of course she disputes it.
Well, let me
She doesn't
ask
know
you-
anything the truth from
Well,
false.
let me ask
Yeah,
you directly.
why
Do you-
though?
Okay, I came on here to talk about Lebanon. If Alan's going to continue to interrupt me and not let me speak,
No,
then
I'll
there's
just
really
ask you a
no point
question.
speaking. Would you like me to answer your question, or are we
Yes.
going to let Alan talk?
No, no, I've
All
asked you a
right.
question. You
It's
respond to
true.
me.
On October 8th, Hezbollah started firing at Israel in solidarity with Palestinians. And since then, we've heard from Hezbollah repeatedly say they will
Illegally.
stop firing when Israel stops its aggression on Gaza. Israel has repeatedly refused to stop its aggression on Gaza, and things have escalated in the north. And I'll also say that, and this is according to the BBC, 80% of the cross-border attacks have actually gone from Israel to Lebanon. This is a two-way fight taking place.
Okay, but
at the
let me
moment,
ask you.
and
Okay,
it's
after
actually-
what you just said, hang on. What you just said was interesting. So you concede that Hezbollah on October the 8th, the day after
See,
Israel suffers its most horrific attack on its
here's
people
Pierce
since the
trying to be
Holocaust,
fair.
something which, if you extrapolated it to the population of America, is like 30 or 40 9/11s.
Yeah,
the
shut-
very
oh
next
my
day,
God.
Hezbollah
Half
decides
of
to
them
launch a
were
rocket attack
killed by
on Israel.
Israelis.
In what
actually.
possible world is that something that you would not expect Israel to defend extremely aggressively, given they
Oh
just
my
endured
God.
this appalling terrorist attack?
That's just so without context.
I mean, Piers, I can't believe you just called it a Holocaust. That's actually offensive to
I
the
didn't call it.
Holocaust.
I called.
We can talk about.
No, sorry,
you said
don't
you said the
misquote me.
worst attack
Hang
since the
on, Rania,
Holocaust.
to
That's
be clear,
offensive to the
I
Holocaust.
said it was the worst attack on people of Jewish faith since the Holocaust of the Second World War. That's
She
what I said.
defends it. She defends it. She
Well, that's what I
thinks
said.
it
Just to be
was a good thing,
clear,
October
that was
7th.
what I said.
Yeah.
So my point, though, is you accept that Hezbollah launched these rockets literally hours after Israel has suffered this heinous terrorist attack. You know, of course they're going to defend themselves.
Rania,
Why
please
wouldn't they? Any
tell
country
them
in the
how
world
they killed
in that
half their
situation
own
would defend
people.
itself. And it wasn't an attack.
Well, I'd like to ask you, at what point do Arabs get the right to defend themselves? At what point does our security matter. Israel has spent the last almost 12 months carrying out a genocide in Gaza. They've killed over 41,000 people, and we all know that's a huge underestimate. Over 16,000 children.
That one?
Just
Who
today,
started that
Israel
war?
has killed
Oh,
300
God.
Lebanese people.
You
including
did by
21
Who
Lebanese
started that
children.
war?
occupying
At what
this
point
fucking
do we even defend
land.
ourselves? And Alan, come on, Israel's been massacring,
stop firing
occupying, and
rockets,
terrorizing
and
its neighbors for the past 76 years.
Stop
Israel needs to
occupying.
stop terrorizing
Stop
its neighbors.
constantly
Stop being an apartheid
taking
settler
more
colony.
land
And
as
maybe
we
its neighbors
speak.
won't fire at it
If you
because
left
its
Israel
neighbors are
alone,
defending themselves
Israel
against
did
Yeah,
not
leave
fire.
Israel
Let me
alone
bring
so they can
in-
just
Let me bring
rape
in Gideon.
and
You've been waiting
pillage
very
more.
patiently. Gideon
These
Levy from
fuck-
Haaretz. Gideon, you've heard both sides here.
Their
expressed very
parliamentary members
forcefully.
were
What is
watching
your
prison.
overview of where we are now? Because it
Oh my
seems from
God.
where we are, I'm currently in London, but it seems to the outside world that Israel is basically ramping up for a full-fledged war with Hezbollah in Lebanon at the same time that it's still conducting a
they do,
full-fledged war
'cause
with Hamas in Gaza.
They're pretty stupid, and this is going to be probably their last
Absolutely.
mistake.
You see, the main problem is that under the excuse or under the umbrella of self-defense, which in many cases is justified, Israel thinks that it has the right to do whatever it wants. The 7th of October enabled Israel to go wild in Gaza, to cross any possible legal or moral border, and to kill 41,000 people. Why? Because of the 7th of October. After the 7th of October, we have the right to do whatever we want, and nobody will tell you you heard the propaganda of the ambassador. Same now with Hezbollah. Hezbollah launched rockets on Israel. We have to defend itself. Until here, very well. But because we are defending ourselves, we have the right to do whatever we want. For example, the devices. For example, to kill today almost 300 people in one day. Is there a limit? I would like just to ask you one thing, Piers, and please answer with honesty.
Yeah.
If Hezbollah would have spread those devices in Israel to soldiers, and hundreds of people would have got blind out of it, how would the world react after it? What would you say about those terrorists, about those monsters who do such things? Why, when Israel is doing, it's always justified. Whatever it does, it's always justified by self-defense.
exactly
Well, I would say,
exactly
okay, I would say,
exactly
let me give my
the
response, Alan. I mean, my response to that would be, as I said to the ambassador, there are very serious concerns about whether that was legal, first of all. But secondly, as we just heard from Rania, when Hezbollah chose on October the 8th, when Israel was on its knees from this appalling, a monstrous terror attack on its people, with 1,200 people slaughtered, nearly 7,000 more wounded, many of them irreparably for the rest of their lives with terrible injuries. When Hezbollah decided their response to that, before Israel had done anything, was to fire a lot of rockets in solidarity with these terrorists into Israel, then in that moment, they made a calculation. And Israel was always going to respond, as Hamas knew it would respond to what they did on October the 7th. And the question for me has always been proportionality. You know, what is proportional? I don't have the answer, but I've asked everybody I can that question, because it seems to me that is at the heart of this. Israel has a right to defend itself, but at what level? So just, Alan, I'll come to you in a second, but Gideon, you know, that is my honest answer. You know, I think you raise a very good point, which I'll put to Alan in a moment. But if this had been an attack on 3,000 people in Israel, or say 95% IDF, blinding and wounding and killing a lot of them, I think there would have been a lot of global outrage. Yes, I do. But that depends how you categorize Hezbollah against the IDF. And maybe I can come to Alan for that. I mean, Alan, it's a good question from Gideon, isn't it? I mean, if it was the other way around, what would you have said?
Well, first, the legal issue is clear. You are allowed to attack an Israeli soldier while he's sleeping or while he's shopping, as long as it doesn't create a disproportionate impact on civilian population.
So you would have found that, just to be clear, it's important, Alan. It's important.
Legally.
To be clear, from a legal point of view, you would have had no argument if Hezbollah had done that to 3,000 members of the IDF in Israel.
Israeli soldiers, yes. Now, to get one soldier, you can't kill 3 children. To get a commander, you can kill 2 or 3 civilians. There is an answer to the proportionality. We look at history. We look at what America did in Afghanistan and Iraq. We look at what Great Britain did, what France did, and we have a history of proportionality. And so, yes, the answer is that if a person is a combatant, it doesn't matter whether they're sleeping, whether they're cooks, or whether they're machine gun operators. If they're a combatant, they're a target. Once they are a target, you have to make sure that when you kill them or wound them, you're not creating disproportionate impact on civilians. What happened with the events last week is that many, many, many combatants were killed, and a teeny, teeny, teeny number of non-combatants were killed. It was the best example of proportionality in the history of modern warfare.
Why is it, Alan? Why is the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights saying that
it's very simple.
What happened was a war crime?
Because Abu Ibn said many years ago, if the United Nations introduced a resolution that the earth was flat and that Israel would flatten it, it would win 144 to 22 with 43 abstentions. That's been the history of the United Nations. It's been the history of left-wing academics. It's the history of your Lebanese person here who says the original sin of Israel, that it can never be forgiven for, is creating a Jewish state in the midst of an Arab country. It's 1948 that she is complaining about.
Okay.
She says the original crime was 1948.
Yes. I'm going to bring Ronnie back in a moment. Gideon,
acceptable.
Let me get Gideon's response to what Alan just said, please.
Yeah, thank you. I really feel an overdose of propaganda, first the ambassador and then Ellen. You see, Israel will always stick to the fact that it is the victim. Whatever happens, Israel is the victim. 41,000 people killed in Gaza, and this is
how many of them are
proportional.
combatants? How many of the 41,000 are civilians? How many are combatants?
I'll tell you exactly.
You haven't mentioned. Yeah, I'll tell you exactly.
I'll tell you. No, but let me first
don't say
17,000 of what? 17,000 of them were children. Children are innocent.
Okay.
Always.
So
if you can live in peace, you can live in peace. No, let me finish now. I didn't interrupt you. If you can live in peace with... No, let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. Let others talk. If you can live in peace with 17,000 children, you have a problem. I cannot live in peace with 17,000 children. You cannot live with it in peace. But let me finish.
You
said
17,000 combatants killed. 17,000
children.
Isn't the point? Okay, let me interrupt.
No.
Because
let's talk about
talking over each other. Don't talk over each other.
Let me finish.
Here's the point I would make, Gideon.
But I would like...
finish your point, Gideon, then I'm going to say something.
Yes.
No, finish your point, Gideon.
Take it. Yes. I want just to raise another point because it is important. We are after 1 year in Gaza, which was a catastrophe for all parties. Israel achieved nothing in this war. Israel's position today in any parameter is much worse than before this war. You name it. Security, economically,
what should they have
it's
done?
a pariah state.
Lay down their arms? What should they have done?
Let me finish.
Sing Kumbaya with Hamas?
Now Israel is aiming to do the very same thing in Lebanon, not learning one lesson.
But Israel's response would be that no, actually, we have managed to massively dismantle Hamas's ability to operate as terrorists. We've destroyed many of the...
We've killed thousands of terrorists. Let's meet in 2 years and we'll see.
I'm just saying
right now they're still shooting rockets.
I'm saying what their argument is.
What we created.
I'm saying what their argument would be. Rania, over to you.
Yeah, but I will answer to this argument. Let's meet in 2 years.
Okay, we'll do that. Rania?
Well, I just want to answer to what Piers just said about Israel dismantling. When you talk about these groups that you call terrorist organizations, you call Hamas terrorists, Hezbollah terrorists. Alan says Israel's just surrounded from everywhere. Everybody hates them, and they're always throwing rockets at them. Where do these groups come from?
You don't think
Take Hezbollah, for example.
You don't think
okay, Alan, seriously, you make it so impossible to come on this program. Let me finish my point. You get to talk 5 minutes uninterrupted, and let me have my moment to talk. And then you can accuse me of all kinds of things, okay? Let's talk about where Hezbollah comes from. Hezbollah emerged, it's Lebanese people, who emerged in the mid-1980s because Israel viciously invaded and occupied Lebanon. I mean, that invasion and occupation was so horrific. Ronald Reagan called up the Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin at the time and told him to stop carrying out what Reagan referred to as a Holocaust on Beirut. That's how vicious the Israeli invasion and occupation
everybody else
and under those conditions emerged a group of Lebanese people who picked up arms to defend their homes and land from occupation, and that's how you get Hezbollah. And they kicked the Israelis out in 2000, and since then they have been seen by many Lebanese who don't agree with it. I'm telling you the reality of the situation.
What's nonsense,
motherfucker? Since then, they have been seen by many Lebanese as a force of protection against further Israeli invasions of Lebanon. And I'll also remind you, Hezbollah has never invaded Israel. Israel has repeatedly invaded Lebanon. The same goes for Hamas, by the way. Where did Hamas come from? Hamas is a group of Palestinians who picked up arms to defend their people against Israeli aggression. So if you want the aggression against Israel to stop, if you can even call it aggression, if you want that to stop, Israel needs to stop invading, occupying, and massacring its neighbors. People in your neighborhood are not going to like you if you continue to kill their families and steal their homes and land. It's really basic.
So let's turn to Gaza. Let's turn to Gaza. In 2005, every single Israeli, dead and alive, they actually dug up the bodies. Every single Israeli left Gaza. Gaza could have become the Singapore of the Mediterranean. There was not an occupation. There was not a single soldier. And then Hamas took over and fired 6,000 rockets.
That's totally not how the history goes,
if
by the way.
Gaza had just decided to use all the money they got from Europe, built a beautiful port, there could be peace. But Hamas decided to invade Israel, attack Israel, culminating on October 7th. But for years, there were tens, thousands of rockets that came in. Of course, Israel's going to defend itself. You say Hezbollah has never invaded Israel. Thousands of rockets. They have 100,000 rockets aimed at Israel's midsection.
Just because they hate the Jews, supposedly, right?
It requires a rocket. So Israel has been defending itself from the day it came into existence in 1948. There could have been a wonderful Palestinian state and a tiny little Israeli state. And all the Arab countries decided to conduct a genocidal war to destroy the nation state of the Jewish people. And Israel's been fighting for its very survival ever since. So let's get real here.
Okay,
if Israel laid down his arms, there would be genocide.
Okay, let me ask.
If the Arabs laid down their arms, there would be peace.
Okay, let me just ask before we bring this to a close. On this issue of Al Jazeera's studio in Ramallah being closed down by Israel, I want to show a clip of what happened here with IDF soldiers raiding the studio and basically shutting it down.
I agree with you on this one. I agree with you on this one. Okay, well, I'll be surprised.
Okay, I'll come to Gideon just for a reaction to this, and then you, Alan.
What did he not be okay with Israeli soldiers raping Palestinian prisoners? Or is that okay with him?
نغادر يعني جميعا. هذا الامر ممكن اشوفه بس لو سمحت. هذا هو الامر الذي احضره لنا الضابط مع هذه القوه العسكريه. القرار يقول بانه امر بشان اغلاق مكتب قناه الجزيره لمده 45 يوما، وهذا قرار عسكري صادر من قائد المنطقه الوسطى بالجيش الاسرائيلي، ويامرنا بان نغادر حاليا وبشكل.
So Gideon, I mean, quite extraordinary spectacle there. I've got to say, as a journalist, I feel extremely uncomfortable about what has happened. It's the kind of stuff you expect from a banana republic, isn't it?
It's one of those moments.
Israel's half a banana republic
that I feel ashamed.
Basically real.
To see soldiers coming
barely
to
real,
any kind of media organization and to shut it down with guns in a democracy. Are you serious? But it's much deeper than this, because it starts there and it will get much farther. Yesterday, Al Jazeera, tomorrow, Haaretz. Trust those people who stand behind it. Trust this government. Trust those Israelis who are so indifferent to what's happening. Al Jazeera is the only media outlet which is present in Gaza. And that's the crime of Al Jazeera, because they are only one who are there.
They
and
pretty much killed, I think,
like
around 150
and so
journalists.
Many times we, Israeli journalists, need
pretty
Al
much on
Jazeera.
purpose.
It was just a few weeks ago when they were the first one to expose the terrible fact that Israel is sending Palestinians with handicapped to the tunnels with cameras. Later on, Haaretz did a big story about it. Israel does not want those scenes to be seen.
Okay, let me. Okay, I just want to get a reaction, Alan. I want to get a reaction specifically to the closure of Al Jazeera studios in Ramallah, because you said that you agree with what I said about
to be
that.
in jail.
Yeah, I think it's wrong. They should never.
Don't
never
sue
close
me,
down
Alan.
Al Jazeera is a propaganda mill. It's not a reasonable journalistic issue. It's funded by Qatar, and it's very one-sided. Israel will never close down Haaretz. Israel, wait a minute. Israel has yes, much more. Haaretz is a very independent newspaper. It publishes you. It publishes many other anti-Israel writers. Yes, Israel has the most.
We're talking over each other.
What about menace?
We're talking over each other. I think, Alan, look, we've got to wrap it up. To be honest with you, I preferred it when Alan said I agree, because it was the only moment of consensus we've had in the entire debate.
I do agree. It should not be closed. But I do tell you that Israel internally has the most vibrant press, including Haaretz, which is always critical of Israel. It will never shut it down. It should not shut down Al Jazeera, and it should allow journalists to go into Gaza and report. Israel has nothing to hide. The truth about everything, if it's reported fairly, will always be on the side.
I agree, but to allow the truth to be exposed, you have to let the media do their jobs.
I agree.
I've got to leave it. I'm glad we reached a point of agreement. It's important to reach some points of consensus. Thank you all very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it.
I need to go. I need a break. I'll be back, guys.